Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Gail Alofsin. Gail is a national speaker, corporate trainer, author, adjunct professor, career coach, radio show host, and business development executive. I'm exhausted just reading all of that. She serves on several nonprofit boards focused on education, hunger, health, and business causes. Gail's book, Your Someday Is Now, What Are You Waiting For?, is in its second printing and has raised over $42,000 for nonprofit organizations. She presents and coaches throughout the country, both in person and virtually. Gail welcomes every new day as an opportunity to live life to the fullest. And with that, I'm going to let you take it from here, Gail.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Lunch and Learn. I absolutely am so thrilled to be here. If you can see in the background, I live in Newport, Rhode Island. I'm actually at my hotel in Kingston, New York. I don't know if we have anyone from Kingston here, but it's my second time to this beautiful city. Absolutely love it. And please, if you are a Scarlet Knight, type it in. I say welcome to Stan. I hope, Stan, you are not the only Scarlet Knight, because this is a great opportunity, in addition to lifelong learning, to also meet each other and meet some alumni. You never know how you can help each other career-wise, personally. It's an opportunity. Today is an opportunity. So a couple of things. Today's title is called Leadership at All Levels, Influence in Place. Type in, what do you think this means? Influence in place. And I'll start giving you the answer as you type in. Influence in place is what you do, how you act, your impact on others, which comes down to self-awareness. And it all matters because it serves to build your brand. Everything matters. The way you communicate, the way you act in traffic when you're very upset and you may breathe. Think about who you want to be. I've been a student of leadership my whole life, amplified by the past 3 decades. And you'll see me do this little hand signal to Margaret because something's up with my Zoom. So I wasn't able to load the presentation. So I've got an awesome wing woman who we've got this down this little thing. So we can go to the next slide. And how do I learn about leadership? One, you saw the picture of Newport Harbor. Working in business development, cruise line, hotel, restaurants, catering, concerts, weddings, producing all the kinds of events. You learn a lot by seeing how people from different corporations act. So you're learning every single day by your work, if you happen to be working right now, and seeing the actions of others. In the classroom, when we were able, you can see me right in the middle there, when we were able to be in the classroom, and now we are in the classroom, but we're in the classroom with masks, at least that last semester, that's how it was. Do the students show up on time? Do they get their work in on time? Are there all excuses? You know, the traditional, the dog ate my homework. Who are the leaders? Who's taking notes? Who has their cell phones away when they're supposed to have? Leadership can start at very, very young levels as well. And it really needs to excel throughout the college years and beyond. But I've seen even the youngest leaders, if you've been a Girl Scout, a Boy Scout, or have children, nieces, nephews who do this, or are in sports, or civic events, or helping people. We started volunteering at the age of 7, and that set a wonderful trajectory for my whole life. And if you haven't had the opportunity for that, it's never too late to volunteer. One of my girlfriends started volunteering at 70 years old. She just had never had that opportunity. She was so busy with work and raising her family and doing things, and she feels so fulfilled. So volunteerism is a whole other subject, but when you do volunteer and you serve on boards or committees, or you coach a sports team, you are a leader there. You have the opportunity for a great role that you may not have in an existing role. So if we can go to the next, I'll show you now our work. Many of you, and you can type in if this is true for you, are working from home. I happen to work on double computers. I was talking to Margaret earlier that I just feel like when I'm traveling or when I'm home, I want to be able to have that second computer going in case one goes down. And I know what you're thinking, Gail, can't you just get one reliable computer? Believe me, I think I have 2 reliable computers, but something always happens. And then this is another thing. You can see now that we're in the classroom, we have hybrid roles. And I do think this will be the future for next year for both conferences and the classroom. And speaking at conferences, a lot of them were hybrid because they would be live streaming. So you have to learn to look at that camera. And I do hope I'm giving you correct eyesight today, like looking right at that camera, but then also looking around the room at the other people in the room so you can be inclusive of everybody. And if you look here, this is like the classroom of today. So I'm going to stop here for a minute. And Margaret, maybe if you can read some of the chat comments, because I can no longer see them, those might be great, just so I see who's in the room, how many Rutgers alum we have. And you can even go to the next slide as well while you read that.
So let's see, we have quite a bit of feedback coming in. So we definitely do have some alums. There's definitely some feedback about your question from earlier. So influence within your current role, influence at all levels. I love this. Leadership is winning hearts and minds. And then in response to your question about who's been remote, we have several people who are remote. Some people are working in shifts so that they alternate time with their colleagues. And we even have someone who's been locked down in Vietnam.
This is a very exciting audience. That is for sure. Lockdown in Vietnam and is still there. That's fascinating. I hope that you're enjoying it and having a good time there. I hope so. So this is a meme that came out of COVID. It's one of the memes that came out that I absolutely loved. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other opportunity. We have so many lessons that are coming out of COVID. And instead of just focusing on the negative, the woe is me, the Eeyore, I lost my tail, instead of focusing on that, what lessons have you learned? And some of you may type it in. What have been the silver linings, the benefits of COVID for you? More family time, learning to work from home, being resilient, being more resilient, being more acceptant, or I should say, accepting. What are some of the ways it's changed you, it's helped you? I was with a client yesterday, and one of his struggles was with his two boys, and his wife works full-time and he works full-time, was scheduling their calls, like juggling that, because they both have business calls and the kids were working from home and they didn't have additional help. But their kids were a little older, 7 and 9, versus one of my clients who has a 10-month-old, then a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. That was really hard for her because both she and her husband work full-time. So maybe you could read some of the feedback that's coming in, Margaret.
Sure. Some of the advantages are things like family time. Someone indicated they were able to do more with their passions because they didn't lose time in commuting. Appreciation of friends and family, their neighborhoods, a lot about family for sure. Because activities are virtual, people are able to participate in more. I guess that means that they don't have to get from one thing to another. Family dinners, good old school family dinners, and connecting with people who are at a distance.
Thank you. So now we'll segue into 2021 opportunities. Yeah. And what's your next? I ask you this because if you can type in, are you working? If you are, you can name your company and your position if you feel like that. Again, this is about networking with Scarlet Knights, but also with new friends. There's no shortage of new friends to make out there. So opportunity, what's your next? Are you working or are you interested in a new job? You can type in that as well. If you're interested in a new job, say yes, and here's the industry I'm interested in. I may know somebody, Margaret may know someone, people on the call. If you are working, do you like what you're doing? And if you may not want to answer that because I mean, your name pops up in the chat, but could you like it better? Because there are going to be times that we all have examples of poor leadership and great leadership, you know, and from leading teams and being on teams for over 3 decades, I am sure, I can assure you, there were times that I was not the best leader. And I do ask for forgiveness to anyone I ever offended. But I knew moving forward, for at least half of my career, I focused a lot on leadership. I wanted to be a great leader. We saw a lot of positive things come out. Do we fall sometimes? Yes. Do we get angry and explode sometimes? Of course. But it's again, it's what you're next because you are your choices. So do you want to be resilient? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be flexible? It's your mindset. It's all on you. So I'll stop here, Margaret, for you to just see some of our feedback.
Sure. So we have the first couple of people who jumped in said that they were, working in companies like, I don't know what Lynette company is, but I see there's someone from Marriott, um, uh, Math for America. We have a couple people who are in transition. We have someone who's looking for something in pharmacy event planning, HR executive. We have electrical engineering, something in aviation, so forth, logistics, supply chain, very, very broad feedback for sure.
Wonderful. Well, to the Marriott, I will give a little shout out. I'm on an 11-day, I'm on the road for 11 days working, and I'm at Residence Inn in Marriott Courtyards, and I'm really, really happy so far. Even though there have been some snafus, I will say that one thing about Marriott and other hotel companies, but Marriott in particular, is everyone does lead from the position they're in. And that is, I have not bumped into a Marriott person who has not had a solution yet. So that is wonderful. And aviation, my husband's a pilot. So you in aviation, I'm sure you've got checklists for checklists. That's for sure. Aviation, you've got to do, you have absolutely have to be on your game with that. Okay, so the next slide, please. This is a picture of the dude. When my sister Jennifer had Cassidy, and Cassidy was 3 years old, she had 3 more girls, the triplets. So she had a 3-year-old, she had the 3 triplets. She works full-time and her husband works full-time. They're both doctors, so they weren't going to just give up their jobs. She adopted the dude, and every single morning, like clockwork, the dude goes right to the cat door, and he looks in the cat door, and he is going to go through it because the dude has no self-awareness. He does not understand that he is not going to get through that door. We see things as we are. We do not see things as they are. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And why is this important? Because every single one of us is seeing the world through our own personal lens. Our experiences, our interactions, they have impact on the way we feel, and they have impact on how we may be influencing others without even knowing it. So this is just a really, really good thing to remember. When I do takeaways at the end, I believe that a very strong takeaway for you to leave with today is the fact that we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And if we start for 1 week or even 1 day being particularly self-aware of our impact on others, if you're having a challenge in a store and you approach customer service, the way you approach, same as an airline, how are you approaching? I was sitting outside a restaurant here last night, and there was a very, very ugly exchange with this couple who didn't have a reservation at the restaurant. Now, I went to this restaurant 3 days in a row, 3 days, dinner, lunch, and dinner, because their customer service was out of this world. And the way the server handled this couple that was belligerent because they didn't have a reservation and there was nowhere to sit was just brilliant. I was really, really impressed. And I'm like, this place has leaders at all levels. The woman serving us our bread, the busser for the table, had been there 20 years. First of all, she smelled fantastic when she came over, but her big smile through the mask, you could see it in her eyes, her kindness. Do you want more bread? Can I take that away? Leadership at all levels. One more thing, I'm leaving to go to dinner 2 nights ago. And again, last plug for the Marriott. There might be other hotel chains on, but there's the assistant general manager mopping the floor. And he was mopping the floor because that's part of what he did. He had to cover 2 shifts. And there was no help. There was just something that happened that day. He's mopping the floor with a smile through his mask. How are you? How's your day going? In his suit. I was pretty impressed with that as well. Okay, next slide, please. So leadership. We're going to stop for a minute, and I absolutely appreciate if you can type in one of the best leaders you've ever worked with or known. It could be a coach in high school. It could have been someone from drama club. It could be someone who works with your children, somebody that you've worked with, someone that works with your nieces and nephews, brothers and sisters, someone that you've worked with. And if you can either say their name or the position they were, or their traits, or both. Like, what are the traits that this leader exhibited? So I'm going to stop and breathe here.
So the first feedback that we have is someone who trusted me and had my back. And I'm sure we have some others that are typing, and I'm sure they're about to send. Someone who can communicate vision, genuine interest in people, not just the deliverables, empathy, empowerment. I see another empathy, collaboration, support. Oh, someone put their mom.
Oh my gosh, I love that person who put their mom.
Uh,
Me too, my mom and dad.
Yeah.
Wonderful
Someone who
leaders.
sees hidden potential, and someone who shared their knowledge and skills freely.
And we won't go through negative leadership, like the leadership traits, because we don't really need to go there, but we know that's more being rude, not being very nice during like maybe performance reviews, just being a little rude with those, being selfish, power hungry, not committal, not inclusive. We've all worked for a bad leader. We just don't want to be a bad leader. That is not something we want to be. Impactful leadership is where it's at, because you remember these people forever. And if some of you were like, oh, Gail, I don't have any impactful leaders in my life, that's okay. You will look for them and learn from negative leadership. My very first job out of college, my boss she had worked for big companies, and then we're at the smaller company in Connecticut. It was a small cruise line. And she said, Gail, I want you to keep a journal of behavior you want to emulate and behavior you do not want to, like that you would never do. Do not bring it in the office, keep it at home. We can do this on our phones now. We can do it in our journal, but I used so much of this content. I did it my whole life that I wrote my book. Your Someday Is Now, What Are You Waiting For? By interviewing over 100 different leaders, who some of them agreed with what I put in the books and others didn't, which I thought was great. Not everybody agreed that you should work on airplanes. Some people think you should enjoy, even if it's a business trip, and enjoy your life on airplanes. I'm using that as a cute example. So I love the idea of writing down things that you want to emulate, even if you just keep it up here. But I am a big writer on writing things down to remember them. Okay, the next slide. That said, there are some days, if you can flash back to Greek mythology, that we feel like Sisyphus. We're pushing the rock up the hill, up the hill, up the hill. And then it just rolls back down. Remember the story from Greek mythology? Sisyphus, he'd be pushing it up and up and up. And right when he gets to the top, it rolls right back down. So what are some of the challenges that you face? And we can also address some answers in Q&A. But right now in chat, if somebody lists a challenge, feel free, as colleagues and friends and honorary Scarlet Knights, if you aren't a Rutgers grad, to help each other, to put the answer right in. Margaret has answers, I have answers, you all have answers. So I'll wait.
Someone has a shared challenge with me, passive aggressive. I'm sure there's a few more that will be coming in as well. And I just want to tell our audience, by the way, that I have my hands full with the slides and managing chat today, so I haven't put as many notes to them, reminders about, prepping for Q&A, but any formal questions that they have that we'll address later in Q&A, please use the Q&A box. That would be helpful. All right, so, towing the company line versus not always, agreeing with the decision.
Having the strength to toe the company line.
Yeah, yeah. So those are a couple of good ones.
Also, a big one that usually comes up is dealing with people who are on strike at work, meaning they're just not all in anymore. And I'm going to tell you, you're responsible for how you're perceived by the way that you show up, by the way you're on Zoom. Are you sitting on Zoom, drinking, hanging out? I mean, not drinking, although we did have one. I had one client that said, it's 3:00. I'm in Puerto Rico, and held up her beer. I thought she was adorable, but she was not working. We were just having an informal conversation. So, but drinking on screen, eating on screen, ghosting themselves, that's not leadership. There's a major hospital in the US that I was doing some work with, and they're like, Gail, you're not going to believe this. You have to see it to believe it. And they screenshot it. And all I will tell you is, this was what's called rounds, when all the doctors get together, and they were doing rounds on Zoom. And there was one doctor in bed, tank top on, quite a hairy chest, giving, and this is all taped, it was all recorded, dictating. You could see the pillow behind, like dictating. I didn't feel that was appropriate. The other person was yelling F words and talking like this, a lot of, just really, really bad language on the Zoom rounds. That's leadership. So this points to the fact that you're going to work with a leader at some point in your life. Most of you will. There are no absolutes, but most of you will. I've worked with 3 like this, that you're shaking your head. How did they get here? How did they get to this position? You can type in your advice on how you dealt with that if you had that in your life. But when I've had that in my life, what I did is I had a lot of guidance still from my mom and dad, and I would stop and I would breathe. And 1, consider the source, especially during performance reviews. 2, not what I call don't argue with the survey, because they're not going to change their mind. It's like when we get a survey, whether we're in aviation or a hotel, or we're in a pharmacy, a pharmaceutical corporation or grocery store, wherever we're doing surveys, and we're like, hey, that didn't happen. Well, the person's not there. The person's not there to refute. And when you're working with someone so toxic, they're not going to change their mind. So there will be points where you'll just have to breathe, especially if you need this job. And remember, I promise you, I've seen this happen so many times. They will cook their own goose. They will. It may take a few levels of example, but that's been a huge leadership challenge that I address with several audiences, is toxic people. So I'll stop here for a minute and breathe and see if there's anyone else or any question, if there's a question or anything else that came up on that, Margaret.
Well, I know that before we went live today, you and I were talking about that we both are walkers. And I know that's one good way to, deal with it is walk it off for a moment, take a step back. But some of our audience has some question, I guess, a little bit on that is if the opposite, it sounds like you were describing someone over confident in their ability, not a good leader, but imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't have the experience. That's something that came up, and we can address that now or later with the Q&A. But
yeah, let's put imposter syndrome to the Q&A, because I think that is an important topic.
Yeah. Let's see, even the worst bosses were great at certain things.
Yeah, that's very great. That's such positive perspective.
Yeah. So when you wonder how they got there, step back and try to find their strength.
And one thing that happens too is communication. That's what I've been teaching now at University of Rhode Island for 20 years as adjunct faculty, is communication. And there has been an escalation of cyber incivility where we're hiding behind the screen. This has been over the past, decades, not just through Zoom, but Stop for a minute before you get mad at an email or text, reread it, again, breathe, and don't answer it right away. Reread it. Some people answer just a quick yes, no, thumbs up. That's just stop taking things personally if you can. I call that talking in staccato when it's just a yes, thumbs up. There are some people who want to write you a dissertation. I always feel like the best leaders, again, no absolutes, but never have an email longer than their thumb. And when I was teaching this in class one day, one of my students, a basketball player, said, "Professor, like this?" I said, "No, not like your thumb, like my thumb." But never send an email longer than your thumb. Put an attachment on because we may not read it. People will zone out. And a lot of us are opening them on our phones right now. So it's like really, really long to be going through it. So Margaret, when you were talking about walking, that's a great way to release the anger. And maybe some other people have ways that they master their mood, because it's really important in leadership to master your mood. I know that if I'm not having a great morning, and I usually love my mornings, I wake up, I spring out of bed, I'm ready for life, I'm grateful to be here, I think about what I'm grateful for. And I don't mean to sound Pollyanna on that, but maybe it's from my upbringing with my parents. We always focused on the fact that we woke up and had our eyes and we could walk and we could use our hands. Like, this is all a big deal that we can do this. So if I am, though, having a bad morning, I'll put music on. That's my big thing. And regardless if my morning's great or not too great, I'll put music in. Usually it's Bruno Mars' Uptown Funk. And that's how I will approach my desk, whether it's in the physical office here in the hotel room or back at my home. Just a little Bruno Mars, Uptown Funk. And if I'm in sales that day, I put on David Gray's Babylon. If you want it, go get it, for crying out loud. So if some of you have a favorite song or way you master your mood, is it yoga? Is it meditation? Please put that in. And while you put that in, we'll go to the next slide. So what I'll do, I'm going to keep going through this, but what I'll do is we'll go back to that question. Okay, Margaret, as people type some things in. So, oh, no, I'm sorry. If you just go back to that slide, I'll go through it.
All right, I have to figure out how to go backwards.
Oh, that's okay. No, don't even worry.
There we go.
So impactful leaders that I've worked with, this is just life according to Gail. And there's so many, I could do a whole presentation on impactful leaders, but I'm sure most of you will agree. They include you in the big picture. I have worked for Tony Soprano, where he told one person one thing, another the next, and third the next. And we had to get together to figure out what the heck did he want. But he was a wonderful boss. He just used Tony Soprano management. They keep you informed and they respect and honor your opinion. They demonstrate intelligence, and a big way of demonstration of intelligence is what I call Stephen Covey. If you remember the Covey books, 7 Habits of Successful People. I remember Stephen Covey talking about loyalty to the absent. God, this is in my beginning of my career. And that always stuck in my head is no gossip, period. It comes back triple. It comes back triple. So by demonstrating intelligence, leaders never talk about other people in a belittling way that I've worked with. They share their knowledge. When you hold on to your knowledge, you're not building other leaders. The biggest legacy, you all know this, that we leave is building other leaders. And there was a person who said this earlier, your leaders have earned your trust. They've earned your trust. So you can go to the next slide, but I'll stop there and see what came in for people who master their moods or their songs that we can share.
So no one shared their songs. I guess no one did any, like, dancing in the car like I did on my drive-in today.
What was your song, Margaret? What was the song?
I can't remember, but I was rocking it. I was really,
Okay.
I had it going on. But I did want to say that there was a comment about situational leadership versus, control and command and control. So
Okay.
that with, we're in a state of transformation, and that our contributor says that, we need more of situational leadership versus command and control leaders.
Absolutely. And we can discuss that even more in Q&A if you'd like to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
A couple of other things are trust indicators. So how do you know that you're trusted? And your trust disappears like that. You can build up trust for years and lose it like that. So trust is part of our relationships. Who do you trust? Who trusts you? And you know it. You know it just by sitting and talking with someone and engaging, whether they trust you or not, unless they're a real chameleon and not a nice person that you're working with or a nice client, but the quality of your relationships. The next is and it's back with quality of your relationships. If you're like, oh, that guy's a jerk. Oh, I don't like that person. Oh, I don't this, like, you better look in the mirror. Is it you? Is it you if you're negative about people all the time? The next is, what's your reputation in your community and in your industry? Are you a go-to person? Are you the type of person? I have a speaker friend or a speaker acquaintance, I should say, is I'm not sitting with one more person who wants free advice on speaking. I have another friend. I'm not sitting with one more person for a cup of coffee, free advice on this. Let me tell you, the more we share, the more we get back. I have a lot of people who want to know how to become a university professor, how to sell corporate sponsorship. How can I be a speaker and trainer? How can I be better at my job? I'm the first one, and I know you are too, or you wouldn't be on this call, to help and champion others. And that becomes your reputation in the industry, community, clients, coworkers, family, when you are the go-to make it happen person. Are you reliable? Are reports in on time? Are your budgets due on time? Are your presentations on time? Are you on Zoom on time? Or do you come flying in and you're late saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so frazzled. Oh, you hit my life. Practice reliability. Resourcefulness kind of goes back to your reputation, and then remarkability. Okay. So remarkability starts with, and we can go to the next slide. It starts with your influence in place. These are 3 leaders. I'm sure you know who they are, but I will help you with this. And they're examples of democratic, autocratic, and laissez-faire leadership. Pepsi has been our client since, and I say our because I work with a team on the Pepsi account, and has been our client since, oh gosh, I don't want to date myself. I'll just say over 30 years. And Indra Nooyi, the first woman here, is no longer their president. But when she was, her style, completely democratic. And thus what this means is she engaged as many people as possible in decision making, right from her direct reports to the boots on the street, I call it, the people on the feet on the street, whatever you want to call it. So the people who have that front line with your customer, when you are a democratic leader, you're listening to that feedback. You are relying heavily on input from others in order to innovate and grow. The other thing I loved about her, that I don't know if this is public, but I heard this from her employees, is she would write, this is the president of Pepsi, she would write over 400 letters annually to the parents of employees. Pretty impressive about how and they were good letters. They were nice letters on this quality, something the employee had done. What a wonderful woman. The next one, autocratic leader. We've got Jeff Bezos here from Amazon. And with autocratic, they see themselves with having all the answers. And let me tell you, that's one man who does, but they make decisions on behalf of the employees. And while I'm talking through democratic, autocratic, and laissez-faire, you can type in what you prefer working with, whether it's a mix of the 3 or one. But Amazon's biggest focus is on raising customer satisfaction. And Jeff Bezos takes that personally. He works autocratic, makes those decisions, get things done. And the last is Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett's leadership style is more laissez-faire. He believes that team members can work independently with little direction or personal involvement from him. And if they make a mistake, learn from it. I'll pick you right back up. He only intervenes with necessary, completely trusts his employees. So these are 3 remarkable leaders with, different skill sets there, different ways of leading. So I'm wondering if anybody wants to, do we have any answers on the type of leader they prefer?
No one was brave enough to share with theirs. And it's funny because Sarah contributed this comment, and she also talked about situational leadership, and it was my thought on this too. She and I think are riding the same wavelength. It depends. Situational leadership. a different leadership approach to different situations.
Personally, I've enjoyed all three, but at this point of my career, I want laissez-faire.
The couple comments that have come in since have also been, in the Warren Buffett camp.
And I'll tell you, I teach a whole presentation on generations in the workplace because I've worked with these generations now for over 20 years. And they want laissez-faire. For the most part, they want laissez-faire, but I do think in some parts that they do need autocratic. I'm glad I had autocratic in my early 20s. There was no laissez-faire when I first got in the workplace. Okay, we can go to the next slide, which is something really important to think about, and it's your remarkability. In working with restaurants at one point of my career, there's a restaurant in Providence, Rhode Island called Hemingway's. And before you ask, when you walk in, if you have black pants on, gray skirt, gray dress, they come over and they put a black napkin. They take the white napkin off your plate and put the black napkin down without you having to ask. I personally find this such a small effort to be remarkable. And remarkability is going that extra mile without giving it a second thought. Just the extra mile. Remarkability could be holding a door open for someone, giving someone a smile. So I'm going to give some more examples of remarkability, and then you can type in your own, because leadership is also, if you want to stand out, if you want to brand yourself, you want to be remarkable. So let's go, if you can go to the next slide. I'm going to give some examples here. This is Judy. Judy and I work with each other. Judy is not in my department. And when we hire over, we run the Newport International Boat Show. And when we hire over 150 people for that show, I personally hire 30. If there's anyone on the call who wants to come down and have fun for 4 days, reach out to me. I'll get you in, and you'll have the time of your life for 4 days. Margaret, I'd love you for 4 days, but they're not giving you up in September. We just have so much fun. If I'm onboarding somebody new, it takes me a half hour. I'm not an HR executive. It takes me a long time to do I-9 forms, all of this. Judy is in accounting. She used to be in HR. One day when I was asking her a question, she said, send me your 30 employees. I'm just going to onboard them. They take me 5 minutes each. She did it after work. Do you all know a Judy? And if you do, you can type in what your Judy does. Who does that? At 5 o'clock, when her day was done, after working with numbers all day, she's going back to what she used to do. Well, the word got out. And my colleague said, would Judy do that too? And Judy said, I'm taking them all. Send me everybody, because when you're in sales or you have other roles, that's what's important to the company overall. Judy looks at the whole big picture. Judy is a leader from her desk in the accounting department. We'll go to the next leader. The next is, if you've seen this at Dunkin Donuts, they did a partnership with Life is Good. And I was at the airport and I said to the woman, I was really excited because the shirts had just come out and both Dunkin and Life is Good have been clients. So I wanted to take a picture and send it to both of them. I said, but I will not shoot your head. I promise you that. So I take a picture of the shirt and I said, how do you feel when you put the shirt on in the morning? She said, it has made a difference. I put this shirt on in the morning and I love seeing positive energy there. So there's unsolicited, there's a man behind her near the donuts and he's like, it makes no difference to me. You can't make these things up. He looks over, unsolicited. I did not ask his opinion. It makes no difference to me. I don't care what shirt I'm on. I'm not going to just change my attitude. And I'm looking thinking, oh my God, you need an attitude change. But I'm like, okay, I understand. All right, if we go to the next slide, it gets even better. Beatrice. If you're ever flying out of TF Green Airport, go find Beatrice. Beatrice is a leader. She is on the housekeeping team, as she calls it, as TF Green Airport. It's about 5 in the morning, 2 years ago. I'm getting, well, more than 2 years, right? Probably 2.5 years ago. I'm getting in the van really early to take the van from the parking lot to the airport. And this woman comes on, the van driver in his or her defense was like, hi. But I'm like, hello, I'm not expecting happiness at 5 a.m. Beatrice comes bounding on and she's like, good morning. And the van driver's like, good morning, Beatrice. And then she sits right across from me. So she's right across, we're looking at each other. And she looks at me and says, good morning, where are you flying to today? And I looked at her and I said, oh, I'm flying to. And she's like, oh, I said, where are you flying to? She's like, no, I work here at the airport. I said, oh my gosh, what do you do? She said, I'm on the housekeeping team. I said, boy, that must be really, really challenging. The way, are people messy? She's like, people are great. Beatrice is cleaning the bathrooms, cleaning the seats, everything, out in the airport. And she thinks people are great. Don't you all want to hire Beatrice? Because I went back and told our HR director this, and she said, we want to hire Beatrice. So I'll stop here because I can't see the chat. So if there's any other chats that we should be monitoring, Margaret, for the sake, especially, if people want to get in touch, please reach out to me afterwards. I'll share my email at the end. I shared it at the beginning, or LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to, stay in touch and answer more questions. But if
So
there's any other comments.
we did have someone share a leader from, or several leaders from their company, and they said they have a few employees who volunteer to work on the weekends to ensure that the employees who have families with small kids can spend time with their families. Leaders, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And if you're remarkable in any way, or someone remarkable who does, I call them the black napkin people, type it in. Type in if you know black napkin people and why. Give it a promotion. If many of you might be in the same area, that's another thing, to type in what state you're in, and all meet each other that way. You might be down the road from each other. You could have a coffee together. So, okay, the next slide, please. And this is one last one. This was the JW in Austin. I call this a purple cow example because if you love the concept of remarkability, I went to Tufts University with a young man named Seth Godin. Oh my God, young man, we graduated decades ago. But an unbelievable man, wrote a book called Purple Cow. And what it means is he and his family were driving, and they're looking out the window. They're driving in the countryside, and there's all brown cows in the countryside. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The brown cows, black cows against the green. But after 20 minutes, they're just cows. And that's us as leaders and as people. We can become brown cow after 20 minutes. So this was an example of what I call purple cow, black napkin. I was speaking at a conference, and I lost my voice, and I still had 2 more days. Never had happened to me before in my life. I go down to the little lounge and I said, I write, I've lost my voice. Do you have any Tylenol? They weren't allowed to give it to me. Long story short, I go to the front desk, I go to the gift shop, I get Tylenol. And when I got up to my room, this was probably 20 minutes, this whole interaction, 25. This was in my room with a note from Maddie Rupp. Hope your throat is better in time for your speech. Here are some remedies I believe will work, and a recipe from Maddie's grandmother. Take the hot water, the ginger, the lemon. Purple cow example right there. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Which brings us to our third and probably the most important part of our presentation. So next slide, please, because we're going to focus on emotional intelligence. And what this is, what emotional intelligence is, really comes down to your self-awareness, but it refers to our ability to perceive and accurately express our emotions, and more important, to understand the emotions of others. If you want to learn more about emotional intelligence, it was coined a few decades ago by a Daniel Goleman. But I feel like we grew up, any of you who have been working more than 30 years like I have, that we grew up calling it the softer skills of business. Having emotional awareness, being able to manage our emotions, especially when we get frustrated or angry, instead of outbursts. 30 years ago, there was some mindfulness and meditation. It wasn't big like it is now. What my boss taught me 30 years ago, and actually it was more like 25 years ago, was count from 40 backwards, Gail. So I'm like, oh, 40, 39, 38. She said, no, in your head, not out loud. So count from 40 backwards, and learning to manage your emotions. When people get mad, my sister brought this to my attention, my other sister. I was really angry one day. I'm on the phone with her and in traffic, and I'm like, I'm going to be late for my appointment. I allowed 3 hours for a place an hour and a half away, and there's a big accident. And she just said, stop. You're not the accident. You're going to get there when you get there, and be grateful you're not the accident. I'm like, oh my gosh, totally changed my perspective. So it's also our relationship management and being the leader first. Next slide. So I show you this because I want to, this is Newport, Rhode Island. This is what I walk by every single morning. That's my mindfulness. And I want you to type in, I know you didn't have your songs, but maybe something you do every morning that could start your day with emotional intelligence. And while you're writing it down, I'm going to give you some examples of simple emotional intelligence. Curiosity about people instead of being I. Back to don't argue with the survey. When you're sitting there and people, there might be some feedback from employees or customers, listening to it and thinking, wow, could we improve that way? Taking a, making sure that you take a long walk or just have time alone to get your head in order, smiling even though we're wearing masks, smiling with our eyes, holding the door open for people behind us, being proactive and opening the door if we see someone carrying big boxes. I'm always still impressed when people do this. And you can type in other ways that you feel emotional intelligence is important, but it does start with your self-awareness, really being aware of yourself. And I said earlier, practice for a day, practice for a week, really watching your impact on others and how you allow them to impact you. So if we go to the next slide, I will say that the happiest people are people who volunteer. I've been volunteering in Haiti since my junior year in college. That's my father with the red cap on. He started Haitian Health Foundation, where we started by just extracting teeth out in the rural parts of, not even the rural, we were first in the bowels of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And this grew, it's a long story, but Mother Teresa of Calcutta found out about my dad, asked her to build a clinic. Everything came together and we have a multi-million-dollar clinic taking care of 250,000 people a year. But I tell people the happiest people I know are leaders by volunteering. And it doesn't mean you have to go to Haiti. It doesn't mean that. You can volunteer in your community. You can serve on boards. If you have ways that you volunteer, type them in because it will help other people. I didn't go to URI, but I serve on the URI Women's Leadership Council with Denise Hemp, who's on this call today, a wonderful woman, a wonderful leader. Tufts University alumni groups, Martin Luther King Center, because I love working with Newport, Rhode Island. We have the second highest demographic of poverty in the whole state, in our beautiful city. So I love working with those less fortunate. Where else? Newport Hospital, Loving Health, and the Chamber of Commerce. Those are just some of them right now. I am saying no to any more because I don't even feel like I'm doing the best job on all that I'm on right now. But it's just so important to help other people. So if we keep going, so we can get to questions. My final thoughts to you today are ancora imparo, which means I am still learning. It's Michelangelo. Ancora imparo, I am still learning. I am hoping, Margaret, there's a way to save the chat because I would love to learn from the chat, or if there's someone who can screenshot it and just email it to me. But one of the things as a leader, as we lead, is please know we can all improve our communication every single day. Every single day. That's a whole other topic I have on communication and how we can improve. But we can and we can start practicing with our friends and family and colleagues at work. Treating people, I call it re-recruiting, treating people in situations the way we felt when we first started working there, if you have the privilege of working with them. Treating family and friends like it might be the last time you see them. What do you want your communication to be? And then there's the concept that I love of Kaizen. One of our clients from Toyota taught us this. It's the Japanese concept of constant improvement. How can you get better every single day? How can you learn more every single day? So if we go to the new slide, I'm going to give you a snapshot of what I do, and then I'd love it if you type in what you do. I'm a big podcast woman. When I drive to the airport tonight, my next stop is a Marriott in Providence. So I'm going to be at the airport tonight before flying in the morning. And I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm downloading them now. But I love Business Wars. It will show you Starbucks versus Dunkin. There's all different companies. So if you have a podcast you like, that's the Business Wars, or Macy's versus Gimbals, for those of you who remember Gimbals. And then there's NPR, How I Built This, that will tell the story of Southwest Airlines, Chipotle. There's all the NPRs. The Skim This is 1 day a week. You get the news skimmed. And of course, TED Talks. You can never listen to enough TED Talks. So if you have yours, please put them in. But here's 4 you may not know about. So we go to the next slide. These are 4 of my friends. And Thomas Farley is Mr. Manners. He's featured on Hoda's show a lot. He's a delightful man. His podcast, What Matters Most, is really about self-improvement in life. And he says the best manners are ones that don't make people feel uncomfortable. That's the best etiquette. That's the best way to be. Roots of Leadership by Anthony Gruppo, Grupo. He is the CEO of Marsh UK. His podcast, it's quick, fast, motivating, has wonderful interview style. Bart Berkey, Most People Don't, But You Do, is all about most people don't hold open the door. Most people don't write a thank you note. Most people don't follow up, but you do. So Bart's all about showing up. And then the last one is From Fear to Fire with Heather Hansen O'Neill. So Heather is another one just about challenges in your life and how they're addressed. So if we go to the last slide, just a few books here. I have LinkedIn for Personal Branding. If you need to really get your LinkedIn skills up, of course, the classics by Dale Carnegie and Stephen Covey, Designing Your Work Life and also Designing Your Life are out of Stanford University. And my book, which 100% of the sales goes for charity. It's not on Amazon. If you're interested, you can just send me an email and I tell you who to write the check out to for a nonprofit. And our final pages, my final pages, Margaret gets there, is a thank you to you. A thank you for being here, for sharing. We can get to Q&A right now. And just a reminder to you is that your someday is now. What are you waiting for? Get out there and be a better leader, a better communicator, a better person, and live life to the fullest. Live every heartbeat. So Margaret, I can take questions or comments now.
Fantastic. We have a couple. First, thank you so much for a great presentation. I'm going to dive right in since we only have a few moments. But what do you think is the biggest contributor to inspiration? Is it the people in the leadership roles that inspire, or is it a well-established process that ensures it?
I don't even think it has to be a well-established process. If you can wake up, if you can go to bed every night thinking of things, and this is, I know I don't mean this in a trite way. You go to bed thinking of things you're thankful for. What are great things that happened that day, even if you had the worst day. And then you wake up with gratitude that you woke up and you have a little yellow post-it, one of those little post-its on your mirror that says, I'm not going to let anyone or anything ruin my day today. I promise you, you are going to have a whole change in mindset. Try that for 21 days in addition to not complaining for 21 days. There's a whole book out there called A Complaint-Free World. You can't complain about anything. You put a band on your wrist. It can be a hairband, an elastic band, and you've got to switch it to the next hand. If you go 21 days, email me. I will send you a prize. I haven't gone 21 days. The longest I've gone without complaining is 4. Okay, I fibbed 3. Because you also cannot bring it to someone else's attention if they complained or you shared a negative thought. I hope that helps. If it didn't, send me an email, gail@gailspeaks.com, and I'll be more than happy to have a conversation if I can help you with that.
Great. And then there were 3 different things that came up in conversation that we said we'd postpone until we got to Q&A. One was imposter syndrome, one was situational leadership, and this may just have been something I picked up in the chat, and it was past the time that, we had kind of moved on, but it was about empowerment and whether that was an indicator of trust. So if you want to take any or all of those, we can use those as in our last couple of minutes.
Can you go to the first one for a minute?
Imposter syndrome?
Yeah, imposter syndrome, stop. Stop right now. If you even, imposter syndrome about you, if you're thinking you're the imposter, stop it. Make a list of 10 things, 20 things that are wonderful about you. If you don't have that list, call a friend. If you don't have a friend, call me. I will help you call out what's great about you and why you're great at your job. No, you can't do everything. You can't possibly do everything. And if you are in a job that's a little over your head, offer to learn. Everything's online. You can go to Rutgers Executive Education and get the mini MBA. You can learn everything online. So stop thinking you're the imposter, if that's what that's about, and then start Googling imposter syndrome. There's blogs, there's articles, there's books. So, just really, really put your shoulders back and be proud. Be proud of who you are and what you've overcome. If you're dealing with an imposter, oh geez, we'd have to have a whole different separate conversation. Like I told you, I've had 3 in my life, 3 that shouldn't have been where they were. And I'm really, all I can say is I'm so glad I stayed with the companies and didn't just walk out, even when I was right there.
Well, we had some great feedback here on your response, and it says, to the person who thinks they're an imposter, you are not an imposter. Really read your resume. You're not. So
Excellent. I love that. Read your
yeah.
resume, read your LinkedIn profile. And if your LinkedIn profile isn't good, go online and just even if you don't want to buy Sandra Long's book, she's the TEDx LinkedIn speaker. Just follow her blog, read everything. You will learn how to get the best LinkedIn profile out there. It's very important.
You Sandra Long has actually done a virtual lunch and learn for us, and it's in our archive, so they can also check the Rutgers Business School. I'll mention where they can find that later. But last question or last comment would be about situational leadership. We brought that up before, and you said let's take that to the Q&A. So
Yeah, and by situational leadership, everything goes, I think everything's situational leadership when you're acting right on the spot. So it's breathing, it's analyzing, it's stopping, and maybe you don't have a decision right then and there unless you need to. Situational leadership, I'm just thinking of the past few days when we had some, there were some issues of, not here at the hotel, but other issues. And the manager was able to just take over and fix them right away. They were empowered. There's companies that empower their employees up to $2,000 to fix something before they go right to the boss. I'm thinking of airlines, different corporations. So situational leadership, it's stopping and thinking about what can you do to improve this situation right now. Did someone just say their Starbucks coffee was the worst they ever had? Pour them another one and give them one of those little free Starbucks cards for a new free one. Be your own remarkability.
well, that is great. And I think that if there are any additional questions, I'll try to go through the chat and see if we missed any. And we'll we've provided your contact information. I saw that pop up again, which is great. But I'm going to move on to my closing, which starts with a thank you. Thank you to Gail for a fantastic interactive presentation about influence and leadership. And our audience, you're amazing. You didn't need my cues like I usually provide about participation. So our Q&A and all the informal polls and everything, that was fantastic. And a friendly reminder to everyone that the RBS Virtual Lunch and Learn series takes place on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Time. And for 2021, we've been doing them on the third Wednesdays of each month. And for more information, you can always visit our webpage, which is long, and anyone who has registered in the past will receive it. So you don't have to necessarily write it down, but business.rutgers.edu/alumni/lifelong-learning. And you'll receive a poll as soon as you exit. And we ask that you kindly share your feedback about presenters and topics for us today's session, and ideas for the future as well. I
And
mentioned when our webinar began that a link to the archive recording of this presentation will be shared via social media, and it'll be emailed to those who've registered. It'll also appear, and this is what I mentioned a moment ago, where to find our archive versions on the Business Insights page of our website. So I am Margaret O'Donnell, and on behalf of Dean Lay's Lifelong Learning Team, I'd like to thank our presenter and our audience for making today's webinar a great one. And I wish all of you a fabulous rest of your day. So bye for now.